All right, this video is for people tired of trying the most commonly taught cold call techniques by sales gurus, things like permission-based openers, pattern interrupts, open-ended qualifying questions, and you're tired of dealing with defensive prospects that push you off the phone before you even get a chance to tell them why you're calling. In this video, I'm going over how to deliver a value statement. This is my value statement framework that's similar, but at the same time, very different than the typical cold call script out there, and it's gonna help you take control and be in the driver's seat of every cold call. And stick around to the end because I'm going to deliver a live role play of how I actually use this with prospects. So let's get into it. So I've mapped out what this framework looks like, and it's very simple. It's only 3 steps. Sometimes it's only 2 steps, and it starts with the opening, then you deliver the value statement piece, and then I'm going to cover what the 3 possible outcomes are after you deliver a value statement. But first is the opening, and I choose to deliver what I call an assumptive formality. This is very different than the commonly taught permission-based openers or the pattern interrupts. Hey, do you have 16 seconds for me to tell you why I'm calling? Or even things as simple as, hey, did I catch you at a bad time? I don't think you need to ask for permission to tell someone why you're calling. You're a human being, you picked up your phone, they also have a phone, you called them, and they answered. You're allowed to speak to them. This is how humans communicate with each other. There's no rule that says you have to ask for permission in order to tell someone why you're calling. And at this point, prospects have all heard the permission-based openers. The alarm bells start to go off once they hear this. So I choose to give what I call an assumptive formality with a downward inflection. I'm signaling that I'm giving you a formality. Just give me a quick formality back, and then I'm going to take control and tell you who I am, why I'm calling, and what I want. So it sounds something as simple as, hey Jem, this is Connor Murray calling from X company. How are you? Or have you been? Choose the phrasing that's most comfortable for you. I've been in sales for 6 years. I still say, how are you to this day? I promise you it's all in the tonality. It's that downward inflection where I'm signaling to them, hey, I'm not here to waste your time. I'm giving you a formality. Give me a quick formality back, and then I will jump right into why I'm calling. So you don't need to overthink this. Ideally, my cold call opener is as simple as that every single time. Sometimes they throw a little curveball at you. They'll be like, good. Where'd you say you were calling from? And I'll say, yeah, I'm calling from X company. I'm just reaching out because whatever it is, I'm just going to assume control, and my goal is to, as quickly as possible, get into the value statement piece, which I'm going to cover next. So once you get that formality back and you take control, you're not having back and forth chit chat with the pattern interrupt or permission-based opener, you're going to answer 3 questions within 30 seconds. And these are the questions that are subconsciously going on in the prospect's head when they answer a phone number and they realize, I don't have this number, I don't know who this person is, I'm in the middle of my workday, what is this about? You need to answer and tell them who you are, why you're calling, and what you want. It sounds simple, but this is the key to delivering a value statement. And again, you don't need to overcomplicate this. The who you are is just your title and your company. There's ways to make it more specific. The why you're calling is the value. This is the most important part. What priorities do you solve? How do you solve them? And what outcomes do you drive when you solve them? And then the what you want is time on their calendar. You have to go for the kill. You got to ask them for what you want, state your intent, which is 15, 20, 30 minutes of time on their calendar. If you don't ask for time on their calendar, you don't have a chance of booking the meeting. So I like to do this at the outset. Now, once you get these 3 things out, here's who I am, why I'm calling you, and I want time on your calendar. Once you physically get that out and they haven't hung up on you, there's only 3 possible outcomes. They could either say yes, they could give you a hard no, which includes being hung up on, or like, I'm not interested, take me off your calling list, and there's really nothing you can do, and they just end the call. That's a hard no. Or they can give you an objection, but now they're within your funnel and you can anticipate all of these outcomes. And just really quick, 2 of the 3 outcomes are very, very self-explanatory, and you almost don't even need to prepare for them. If they say yes, just book the meeting. If they're very receptive and they understand why you're calling and they're like, oh yeah, thanks for reaching out, let's set some time next week, don't overthink it. A lot of reps try and go back and forth and they do too much talking. I say wrap it up quickly, tell them you'll send an agenda, send a strong agenda right after you get off the call, and just book the meeting. If they give you a hard no, that's the other outcome, then you just make your next call. If they hang up on you and tell you to get lost, like there's nothing you can do. You just make your next call. So you don't even need to prepare for those 2 outcomes. So the only one you really need to prepare for once you deliver the value statement is an objection. So now you can be prepared for the most common objection. You took control, you told them who you are, why you're calling, what you want, and they could say something like, yeah, we just don't have the time right now, maybe reach back out in 5 months, or we don't have the budget, I'm not the right person. You'll know what the most common ones are. I typically recommend start off with the most common 4 or 5 objections that you receive. That's going to account for like 80-90% of objections you get, and literally make flashcards on how to respond to those so that once you deliver your value statement, if they give you one of those, you just know what to do right out of the gate. And my first line of defense and technique for handling objections is what I call selling time. So a lot of reps will get objections like, hey, we already work with a competitor. I don't think it makes sense to reach out. And in their head, they're like, oh no, I got to sell my solution and tell them why it's better than that competitor and why they should consider switching. When in my opinion, that's way too hard to do on a cold call where you just got someone out of the blue in the middle of their workday. What I choose to do instead is double down and sell the time, sell the meeting. I get it. You already work with a competitor. We work with X competitor all the time, or we work with customers of X competitor all the time. This is more just to get introduced and aligned going forward. So does next week work for you? And it's a repeatable formula that just gives you an extra shot on net. It shows them you're serious about meeting and you're not necessarily trying to convince them to move off of a competitor on a cold call. If they still say no to that, which happens a lot, but you'll win some meetings just by doubling down and selling time. They'll be a little surprised and be like, okay, yeah, I'm free next week. But if they're still like, no, I don't think it makes sense, or there's some hesitation, but they're still on the phone, that is when you can start asking qualifying questions, open-ended qualifying questions. I get a lot of comments like, do you recommend asking open-ended qualifying questions at all? And I know on previous videos I haven't really talked about that, but yes, I do. I just think this is the time to do it after you've already given something first. You've delivered value and told them who you are, why you're calling, and what you want. The difference and the mistake that I see a lot of reps, and this is how they're trained, is they basically just answer the phone and start asking the prospects a bunch of qualifying questions right away. And it sounds like an interview, and the prospect's like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't have time to answer all these questions because you haven't delivered any value yet. If the prospect is still on the phone at this point, they're signaling that they're interested, or you've piqued their interest enough or earned respect or built credibility enough that they're still on the phone with you. Now is when you can start asking some of those open-ended qualifying questions, because now you've been on the phone a minute or two and there's some rapport there. So that's really the framework. It's meant to be very simple and repeatable so that you know what you're doing every time the prospect says hello. When they say hello, you give an assumptive formality and you take control as quickly as possible. Once you do, you go right into telling them who you are, why you're calling, what you want. If they say yes, book the meeting. If they say no, move on, make your next call. The only other outcome you need to be prepared for is an objection. Ideally, you're prepared for the most common objections. You double down, you sell time. If they don't say yes to that, that is when you start having your back and forth, asking open-ended questions, digging a little bit deeper. But then again, go back to selling time. It's a cold call. I want to be having this discussion on a real discovery call when there's time set aside, they're expecting to be meeting, I can properly prepare, and then I can go into delivering the full value proposition of my solution on that call rather than this off-the-cuff cold call. So now, as promised, here is what a value statement can sound like in practice. This is going to be a high-level generic example, and don't take the exact words I use, but adapt it. It's meant to be a framework that you adapt for your own role, your company, the personas you target, all that. Hey Jim, this is Connor Murray calling from X Company. How are you? Good. I'm just reaching out because I'm part of the team that supports X Company regarding back office financial applications. So anything related to planning, budgeting, forecasting. And I'm just reaching out because we usually work on priorities related to strategic planning, rolling forecasts, even intercompany planning, usually by reducing the reliance on Excel and the amount of different tools organizations use to get these processes done. And I know I kind of called you out of the blue here, so I'm more just looking to set aside some time next week to introduce you to my team so that we can get aligned with your priorities going forward. How's your calendar look next week on Wednesday or Thursday? So I know it sounds like a lot, but what I'm doing there is selling time, and I'm selling myself. I hopefully sounded like someone who's competent, different than the typical cold call they get. And in their head, they're subconsciously like, okay, they answered my primary questions. I know what this call's about, and this person seems like they know what they're doing. Maybe it is worth 15, 20 minutes of my time, because these people have priorities and challenges that I just named that they should be working on. They just don't want to set up a call that they feel like is going to be a waste of their time, or even worse, bring on a peer or a superior like their boss and have their time get wasted. But you can see once I physically get that out, there's only three things that can happen. The guy could either say, oh yeah, sure, I'm free next week. He could say, nope, take me off your list, click, and not much I can do, just make your next call. Or I can be prepared for the most common objections. So this is what I mean when I say value statements are similar to cold call scripts. That sounded like a script, but it's the framework of taking control and having them enter your funnel where you can be prepared for whatever the outcome is. So hope this helped. If it did, let me know, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.